I wanted to do a really quick video on 5 unique traits, and they are unique. However, they are surprisingly common that I see within the late diagnosed autistic community. Like I say, it's unique, but it is so common within the autistic community would be that they are often very highly sensitive people. And for me, this is a no-brainer because their natural energetical attunement and their physical attunement has always been known to be more sensitive. So we've always known it to be true that obviously people on the autistic spectrum are a lot more likely to have a very strong reaction to over processing and having sensory input. So that could be that they might be sensitive to noise. I know I certainly am. And they might have sensitivity to smell or whatever it might be. However, it also would make sense then that the profile of people with autism are more highly sensitive. And this actually can often look like and be overlooked, especially in young age, of being told when we're younger that we're just too sensitive, or you just take things too seriously, you just feel too deeply, you just take things to the extremes. And actually, being a highly sensitive person, I've already done a video on this, is a great thing to have. However, it is overwhelming in itself, and it's not something that you can do anything about. So I think that it's one of those things that it makes sense that an autistic person will be highly sensitive, but it's just sort of overlooked that actually, and I'm not saying that everybody who's highly sensitive is autistic. Please take what fits and leave what doesn't. However, this is not a diagnosing video either, but it is something to keep in mind when you are either maybe on a self-diagnosis journey yourself, or you're going for a diagnosis in later age, or maybe you're around somebody who you're maybe learning that they are autistic now and how you can basically accommodate or help them. I think it's really important to note that it is very likely that they will be more attuned and they will be more sensitive to everything, including their own emotions, their own experiences, which I think that's why a lot of trauma can compound, but I'll go into that in a bit, and also other people's. They will notice things about you. They will notice things about you, believe me. And number 2 would be, and this is again so common, but it's unique in the sense that it's not spoke about enough. They have interoception difficulties. So interoception is basically where your internal messaging system isn't quite as attuned to what it's the message it's trying to deliver as other people. So say for example, a neurotypical person gets hungry, and I often see it within females. However, it's definitely not exclusive to females. I definitely see it in men too, as well as boys, because my son literally taught me everything that I need to know about my presentation of autism, because he is so similar to me. I'm going to delve into a little bit of what I kind of see the presentation of this like, and try to somewhat make sense of it to help anybody who might not have come across this before. So the first one that I see, they will feel the hunger signal and they will go and eat, or thirst, or whatever it might be. I see within the autistic community that it can just feel slightly different, and their messaging system, because I think this links to the first point, that they have a higher sensitivity, because they have so much input all the time, and the way in which they are receiving the world is, this could be wrong and I will put the correct statistic afterwards, sorry, but I think that it's something like 47%. They are taking in 47% more information all of the time. So I think it kind of dulls down the sort of like internal messaging system, and it can just get really confused. So I see things like they might feel emotion and feel more hunger, and they might misinterpret more things as hunger, or alternatively, something I see probably even more often is that they don't even receive the message of hunger because they are so busy dealing with all the other things that they forget that they're hungry, they forget that they're thirsty, until it proves to be a problem, which usually comes after either a shutdown or a meltdown. And again, I think that's really important to notice. And number 3 would be, especially within the late diagnosed community, and again, if anybody isn't late diagnosed but also feels like this, please do tell me. But I see that they are very much all and this is from my experience, hyper vigilant and hyper aware. They have an attunement to details that other people might not pick up on. So they will notice things like the slight difference in somebody's walk. They might notice that makes them feel uneasy, or they might notice that there is a slightly different tone in the person that they're speaking to. And this is almost contradictory, isn't it, to the idea that we don't always pick up on the social cues. And I think that although I think that there is so much and so many layers of confusion that can happen in the midst of the processing of what's going on in a room, I actually notice so much in the late diagnosed community that there is a hypervigilance, there is a hyper awareness, there is a sort of, I want to remain safe, so I'm going to be attuned to everything, even things I don't really want to be attuned to, even things that other people don't notice, that I'm just not consciously doing, but doing all the time, because I'm always stuck in this sort of, I'm never in the middle of the experience, I'm sort of in this bird's eye of the experience, and I'm taking in all things into account because I regularly don't feel safe. I regularly don't feel like I'm understood. So it kind of is like a byproduct of that. Please tell me if you relate to any of these as well, because I think it would be great to build a community of people where we are all having some level of understanding about our own experience, but also all these other people who are also feeling these things too. And the fourth one would be delayed processing. Listen, before you even comment, I know that you can relate to this. I think that both in the autistic and the ADHD community, our minds can be quite fast, but because of the amount of information that we are receiving, even if we feel like we're processing it in the moment, what we tend to find is like a little bit after, usually maybe the day after, even maybe a week after, things start to slot in place, whether that's we start dreaming about it and making sense of it, we kind of come to a different emotional conclusion from what we made in the moment because it took us a couple of days to process what had happened. We kind of think it over, and the thinking it over, and I know you can all relate to that, the thinking it over, even though you don't want to be stuck in that cycle of overthinking, is usually helpful to the fact that it helps you understand a situation better so that you can better prepare for it in the future, because we often need that in order for us to feel safe, because we don't want to be constantly up against change. And change isn't always something like an event. It can be the fact that we're never feeling prepared for something. So we often do the overthinking cycle to be prepared for something. But yeah, basically, I think that delayed processing is really common. And it's also the reason why I think that we can have that fluctuating capacity. Because what if on the day we have so much on that we can't necessarily process it in that moment, and then we have a really busy day, and then we have another kind of sort of medium day, that then the processing happens, and then our plate or our capacity is suddenly full, and then I just empty and we need to recharge that battery. I think that there is so much going on inside the autistic experience that it'd be really good for us to really talk about it more, but understand it more, so that we can and include the spectrum of how that looks to really understand the autistic experience. And I think that we're starting to do a really good job of that. And the fifth one, and again, I think that most people could probably relate to this on the late diagnosed community, is that you will always find that they have a very intense and deep, almost bordering obsession interest. And I know that having a special interest is something that is obviously often to spoke about, and I know it is certainly something that come up on my assessment when I had mine, but I think that it's usually deep and it's lifelong, and it's one of those things that is all consuming, and it's easy to miss it because every person on the planet has interests, but I think to the depths of how much you're interested in it is usually the indicator of that this potentially, not always, but potentially is actually an autistic trait. So something that you might notice within somebody who has autism and has a deep interest, they could be interested in the same thing about you, but they will know so much more about it. They will throw random facts. Did you know? Did you know that so-and-so is this? My son, for example, He knows the size of all the kaijus. He knows what power they have, which could defeat which, and he will go into the depths of like how much Godzilla has grown between movies. Because I'm not interested in Godzilla to the degree that he is. I just see, and I like Godzilla, but I just see Godzilla in the movies. He knows exactly how much Godzilla has grown between the, Godzilla King of the Monsters versus the one that just came out last week. That is where you start to go, okay, there's something a little different here. And I think that the all-consumingness of a special interest is really important to note here too, which would be, for example, myself, two of my things. So one of them is art, drawing, and when I am in the process of creating a piece of art, I cannot drop it. It is quite detrimental actually to my functioning in life and into my ability to be a wife, to be a mother, to work, to wash, to cook, to do fundamental basic life things, because it is all consuming, and if I can't finish it, the aftermath of that becomes problematic. In the same way that my obsession with self-development, psychology, behavioral patterns, the way that people work, the way that mind works, the way that how did somebody end up with that outcome and how did somebody end up with that outcome, is also all-consuming. It's great for my line of work because I'm a therapist. However, I never drop it. You could ask me every day for the rest of my life, what have you done today? And even if I have rested, I will give you a new bit of information about what I've learned about that, because it is all-consuming, and I don't think that that's typical. So tell me, what other ones would you add to the list? And can you relate to any of these? I think these five unique, but like I say, surprisingly common traits are something that I think more people need to know about. But I wonder whether there's some that I've missed. Please let me know. Speak to you soon.